Public affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And hold your horses. We're going to be doing a lot of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Julie Hamos. She, of course, is the director of the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services. Did I get all that right,
yes,
Julie?
You got it right.
All right, and she's spent 12 years in the state legislature, so she knows politics. We're taping this show on March 11th, 9 days away from the election. There are a number of Democratic primaries coming up, and Julie knows and is going to tell us who's going to win every one of them. The fact that she has endorsed a little bit, like the 10th Congressional District, Julie, who's going to win? The fact that you've endorsed couldn't possibly mean you might be biased.
Brad Schneider's going to win the 10th.
How about that? Where's Brad? We invited him here, but he couldn't make it.
I can't account for
Ilya
that, but I
Shaman
will
came here.
I will recommend
John
that he
Tree
come
came here. Vivek decided that he offered to come here. It was our fault that he wasn't here. So where's, you know, he, and doesn't, look, you think it's just me. You think I'm overly sensitive. Brad, I'm not overly sensitive. Come back, even if you win the thing and come back for the general election, we'll treat you fairly.
He'll be here.
He'll be here?
I hope so.
What do you mean you hope so?
I don't control the guy, but I'll work on it.
All right. So,
All right.
but the main thing is, it's not just me. Paul Lisnick, you know, runs a little show called Chicago Politics. And, you know, all three other candidates were there for the panel discussion, but not Brad Schneider. I mean,
Jeff,
is this guy afraid to come out? Is he afraid of Paul? Forget Berkowitz. He's a little local access guy. Who cares about him? But Paul Lisnick deserves respect, doesn't he? He's on CLTV. That's WGN. Mr. Lisnick should not be offended, right?
The most important thing about
And
this
treated
next
lightly.
election is for people to come out and vote, because I'm worried that this election is kind of a sleeper. People aren't too excited about too many candidates. They're still disgruntled about all kinds of things. So the most important message right now for me is in the next 9 days, check out the candidates, read their literature, read the endorsements, and come out and vote. And I hope you will vote for Brad Schneider, but the most important thing is to vote.
Yeah, and the most, let's give people a little advice here since you're endorsing Brad.
Yes.
You know Elias Shaman, right? He's 25 years old, but he's devoted most of his 25 years, it seems, to working hard for the Democratic Party. People know where he stands. He's worked
Well,
for...
I don't know about most of his 25 years. He's only 25 years old.
Well,
but the last few years,
a
yes.
little poetic license here,
Yes.
Julie. Could you lend me a little hand here?
Well, maybe when he was 4 years old, he wasn't so invested in
But
the
seriously,
Democratic
the
Party.
last 3 or 4 years, certainly he's been out there. He's been working for
Yes,
MoveOn.org.
I've heard that.
You're a good buddy, Howard Dean. You like Governor Dean, right? You don't like Governor Dean?
He's okay.
He's
sure.
endorsing Elias Shaman. Does that mean anything to you?
People are endorsing on both sides.
Okay, so Shaman's got Howard Dean,
Yeah.
who almost was the Democratic Party presidential nominee in 2004, almost, right? 2004? 2001 of those years, right? Mm-hmm. So he was almost running for. So you got Elias Shaman being endorsed by Governor Howard Dean, and you got Brad Schneider being endorsed by Julie. I mean, really, Julie, with all due respect,
Well,
did they balance out?
probably not. But still, people should look him over because Brad Schneider has the endorsement of the Tribune and the Daily Herald. And they did look at the candidates. I sat down with the candidates, and I realized that Brad Schneider is the best fit, the best profile, has the experience, has the background, has a business acumen, and has a love and commitment and support for Israel. And he is the guy that will win the Democratic primary and go on to win the general election.
You think? Now, what do you think? Let's go ahead. So you think that Shaman doesn't have the same experience. What is it that you prefer? Why do you prefer Brad Schneider to Elias Shaman? Just give it to me in a second or two.
Well, in a second or two, I think the fact that Brad has
Give me some substance,
an MBA,
not platitudes.
has an MBA,
Don't read his
and
resume
a business,
to me.
Has an
Give me
MBA
some
and a
issues,
business
some issue.
background. No, the issues are exactly the same.
So it's not, these guys are going to have the same positions on the
They have
issues.
the same progressive values, but what is the 10th district voter going to look for? They're going to look for somebody with some experience with the business background. It's a complicated Congress, they're all going to. And I think a 25-year-old MoveOn organizer isn't going to have the exact profile that the 10th district voters will vote for.
So if they all have the same views, I mean, did Brad give money to Mark Kirk when he was
I
running
understand he
against
did.
Dan Seals?
I understand he did.
And he said something about it's because he's pro-Israel. Wasn't Dan Seals pro-Israel?
Well, can I tell you that there are the swing vote in the 10th district are the so-called Mark Kirk Democrats and Independents, and they're the people we need to woo back in the Democratic Party. I always
so
believe
Brad
that.
Schneider was a Mark Kirk Democrat?
He
was a Mark Kirk Democrat?
Well, he supported Mark Kirk with some
So he's a Mark Kirk
contributions.
Democrat.
He supported Mark Kirk because of his support for Israel.
And now he's become
and there are a lot of people
now he's become
like
a Brad Schneider Democrat?
And I believe there are a lot of people in the 10th district who are exactly like that, and they need to come back into the Democratic fold, and they will understand
He
that,
didn't
and
say
they
that.
will value that.
He wasn't candid. He was asked that at WTTW, and he didn't say he was a Mark Kirk Democrat. He blurted about he supported Israel. It's fine to support Israel, but he blurted. Shouldn't he have been honest and said, you know, I was a Mark Kirk Democrat, and I joined with the Republicans, but now I've come back to the Democrats. Shouldn't he have said that? Wouldn't that have been honest, you know? You just said it. Why shouldn't he?
What I said was that there are a lot of people in the 10th district. I recognize this. I knew them. I saw them. They were ready to vote for a Democrat if they found the right Democrat, but they had supported Mark Kirk. I didn't blame them for that. I wasn't angry about that. They supported Mark Kirk because of his support for Israel. And the fact that Brad Schneider also supported Mark Kirk because of his support for Israel doesn't offend me. It is what the 10th district, there are a lot of people like that in the 10th district.
Do you think
and people will value that level of independence also.
But you would agree that Elias Shaman would energize the base in the Democratic Party in the 10th Congressional District?
I don't think Elias Shaman can win in the general election.
But if you can't energize the base, your own base, then Brad Schneider can't win either.
I understand that.
Can he energize his base?
I think Elias Shaman is apparently talented. He's a young guy. He has a future. I don't think he can win the 10th district.
What about John Tree?
As a Congress. I haven't met him.
Well, do you think he could? He's married.
I
He's
have
got
no
kids,
idea. I'm
military
not going to
background. Well, maybe you
express-
should. He's got 22 years in the military. Do you think that outranks Brad Schneider? And people can look at that and say, we can trust this guy as a Democrat. He won't be weak on defense. Can they say that about Brad Schneider?
You know what, Jeff, we make our personal endorsements based on people we meet, based on whether they have the qualities, the values that we can support. I met two guys early on. They asked for my support. I decided to give my support to Brad Schneider. I hope you will too.
All right.
You, the audience. You're not going to, but I hope the audience will look him over.
I don't take a position. I don't endorse.
Yeah.
We just try to be tough and challenging on everybody. We try to do a service for the Democratic primary. Bring those folks on, bring Shaman on, ask him questions.
Good.
Bring Tree on. We
Great.
tried to bring Schneider on, but last July he said he'd be here, and come March 11th, he's still not here.
Okay.
So we tried.
Good.
All right, but one question. When you go to the general election, okay, Bob Dole, he's sort of taken the same approach as Kirk. As you know,
he can fool a lot of people.
Kirk had co-opted every Democratic constituency. Kirk was pro-choice on abortion. He was pro-environmental.
Yeah.
He was pro-gun control. He was pro-Israel. He was pro-public school teacher.
That's why a lot of independents and Democrats supported him.
And isn't Dole doing the same thing?
He is, which is why this is the moment in time to beat him.
Well, how is Schneider, if Dole does the same thing, how is Schneider going to beat him?
Because we are going to convince people that Bob Dole is masquerading as a so-called progressive, but he's not. And he votes down the line on Republican Party issues, including Tea Party issues. And that's what people are going to be very concerned about in this fall election.
They said the same thing about Kirk, and it didn't work. So now you're saying it's going to be different
people don't know
with Dole?
Bob Dole. He hasn't been there very long. This is the one time to beat him, and Brad Schneider will do that in the fall election.
We don't take a position on that. We hope Bob Dole comes back. We haven't seen him in 2 years on the show. We hope whoever wins comes on this show, because we're fair, balanced, and definitely unafraid. You would agree, right?
Yes, I've been on the show many times.
Okay, and we're fair.
Sure. A little biased, but okay.
A little biased. I don't even know what that means.
It's okay.
All right, well, let's go over the state Supreme Court race.
Yes.
That's another race.
Another very important race.
Yeah, and who are the candidates? You tell us.
Well, there are 3 women and a man. Mary Jane Tice is the candidate I am supporting. Joy Cunningham, Ori Paczynski, and I think a guy named Flanagan, something like that.
Tom Flanagan.
Flanagan? Okay.
Yeah. All right, so the 3 major candidates are thought to be Ori Paczynski and Joy Cunningham and Mary Jane Tice.
Mary Jane Tice is now serving on the Supreme Court.
But she's not the incumbent because she was appointed there.
She's-
She was appointed basically by her friend.
She's
her
had a
friend,
long and very
basically,
distinguished
Justice
career.
Fitzgerald got to do the appointing, even though the Supreme Court technically appoints.
Mm-hmm.
They follow the custom and practice. The person resigning gets to pick his successor. He picked her. Some would say he was a friend of her father who was a judge. It's sort of like crony, political stuff. Is that right?
No.
I mean, she has been a judge for 27 years.
She has a
Do you think she's been a
long
little bit
and
cloistered,
very
maybe?
distinguished service, and that's what everybody values. That's why she's getting the highest ratings. That's why she's getting all the endorsements.
Let me ask you about this.
I mean, you cannot fault Mary Jane Tice for any of her credentials.
Well, let me ask you about this, because she says, I mean, Mary Jane was supposed to be here, and look, it's not a big deal that she said she'd be here last Sunday, and then she canceled an hour before. They said it was a personal problem. And they said they would reschedule, and they were going to let me know so she could be here. Julie's kind of filling in for Mary Jane Tice. I guess you're a surrogate,
Whoa,
okay?
okay. I'm
So
proud.
that worked out nicely.
Great, I'm proud of that.
Except they just never got back to me after saying that Mary Jane would be here either 2 or 3 o'clock on Tuesday. So Brendan O'Sullivan, this is a shout out to you. If you're listening, maybe you should get back to me before the primary. I mean, it's only common courtesy. And the thing is, Mary Jane hires Brendan O'Sullivan to be impolite to me. What does that say about Mary Jane? Maybe people think she might be a good judge, maybe she writes okay opinions, but shouldn't she treat all people well? Or should you just say, oh, Berkowitz, he's a little guy, just kick his head?
No, I don't believe in that. No, we were talking
Oh,
about
talk about this. Yeah, this ad. I almost forgot. Oh, so this is an ad that went out to, I guess, mostly Democrats.
Well,
Being
it's a
balanced, I got
personal
it.
PAC endorsement.
Bench
Personal
warrant. It comes
PAC
from personal
is
PAC?
a-
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think it does.
You-
Personal PAC.
Here, look at,
is,
just tell us who it comes from. Read it at the bottom.
yeah,
They always have to say.
A Personal PAC is an independent, bipartisan, statewide organization
And they're sending this out.
dedicated to educating the public about the positions of candidates, and they really care about reproductive rights and choice. And that's what they are very worried about here, is that Mary Jane Tice, they're comparing to Aurelia Paczynski, who they claim has really backtracked and gone back and forth on issues of choice.
Do they? They cite they cite one thing in 1994 in the Chicago Tribune. Are you familiar with that 1994 article?
No,
Does it
and you know
say
what?
that? Does it say that Ori Paczynski was pro-life then? Because I'm not familiar with that. Maybe you can enlighten me.
Well, you
Because
know
they
what?
make this whole brochure
I
about
mean,
that.
so again, I didn't put this out. This is an organization that
Personal
decided to
PAC.
endorse. So
Which is a
they're-
pro-abort. We could say a pro-abortion organization. Would that be
They
fair?
care about reproductive rights and
But they're
maintaining
pro-abort. It's a
reproductive rights
pro-abort.
of
Why are
women.
people afraid to
Nobody's
say?
pro-abortion. By
They're
the way.
not.
No.
Personal PAC.
Maintaining,
Planned Parenthood. Isn't Planned Parenthood like?
maintaining a safe and legal abortions in this
Okay.
country is an issue, but nobody's pro-abortion. I'm
Well, but
certainly
here's
not.
what I'm trying to understand, because if Mary Jane, when you ask
And
her
again,
about
this
abortion,
is one organization, but they do care about reproductive rights, and they have decided to endorse Mary Jane Tice, who is completely qualified on many other issues as well. One organization decides to endorse. People might care about that.
but does Mary Jane get worried because she said, I think, that she can't. The canons of ethics say that judicial candidates can't commit to a position
Right.
that might come before them.
Right.
Commit to a position. It doesn't say she can't talk about the doctrinal issues that have developed around abortion or abortion ruling. It doesn't say that at all. But she would say that. If she were on the show and I said to her, well, are you pro-choice? She would say, oh, I can't comment on that, right?
That's right.
But she has not said, I think she should come out and tell Personal PAC, withdraw this brochure, because it says essentially that Mary Jane is pro-choice. It says that. And Mary Jane doesn't want to say that because that would be committing her to a position.
Right, and I don't know when she
And it
has-
says that Ori Paczynski is not pro-choice. We don't even know if that's true. So should Mary Jane Tice
Well, maybe-
ask Personal PAC to withdraw this brochure as being misleading and also maybe in violation of the canons of ethics?
And Ori Paczynski has run for many other offices where she has had to declare what her position is on reproductive
what?
rights. Because, well, she's run
Circuit
for
Court of Cook
clerk.
County, she wouldn't have to declare a position on
I'm
reproductive rights
sure
for
that
that.
she- I'm
They
sure-
don't make abortion policy over there, do they?
I'm sure, I'm positive, I've been a candidate many times, I'm positive that she has filled out numerous questionnaires from many organizations. And in those questionnaires, she did take positions, and they are looking at actual positions she has taken on issues of the day. That is true of Ori Paczynski. She's run for other kinds of things before.
Like Circuit Court of Cook County.
This doesn't talk about Mary Jane Tice taking a position on anything. What they're
Well,
pointing
they're implying
to
that
is
she's pro-choice.
No, they're not implying anything. They're
Well, then
talking
why would Personal PAC come out for her if they didn't know?
So Personal PAC is allowed to endorse candidates, as are many other organizations, and they're pointing to the fact that she's highly qualified by the Chicago Council of Lawyers, highly qualified by the Illinois State Bar, highly qualified
So a
by
bunch
the
of
Chicago
lawyers should
Bar.
make the decision. Let's defer to the lawyers.
Well, we do often, because of judges, we don't know who we're voting for, and people do look at these rankings. And they should look at these rankings because Mary Jane Tice has a long and distinguished
Well,
career.
you've probably heard this, that reliable sources say that Mary Jane Tice came up to Joy Cunningham, who's an appellate justice, also running in this election, happens to be African American, and said that, Joy shouldn't have gotten in this race. She should have waited until Justice Freeman, who also happens to be African American,
I don't know
stepped
anything
down.
about this.
You've never heard this?
From Joy Cunningham.
Have you? Did Joy tell you that?
Yes.
Oh, and what did you say when Joy told you that?
Nothing.
Did you
What
think,
am I supposed to
you think
say?
Joy was making that up?
I don't know.
Well, you can.
Truthfully, I know
you
Joy.
are some
she's
judge of judgment. You have some
you know,
credibility.
I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know anything about what Joy is saying or why she's saying it.
You think she would make that up?
I don't know.
You've known Joy for a long time, right?
I've known her for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. She's been a judge now for 10 years, circuit court and appellate justice, right?
I don't know.
Do you think she's a person of
You
good
know
judgment?
more about her background than I do.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying she is a Democrat, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's somebody you would rely on.
she served on the bench
She has
with my
similar
husband,
values
sure.
to you. She served with your husband,
sure.
Justice Alan Greiman.
Sure.
One of the true, really great guys who
Thank
I
you.
know personally.
Thank you.
Okay. No bias. He just happens to be a great guy.
Right.
Okay. But seriously, so Justice Greiman knows her. She knows you. You know this stuff. Would that be wrong if Justice Tice comes up to Justice Cunningham?
Honest to God, I'm not going to comment
Would
on
that be
this.
wrong for her to say? Just
I-
hypothetically, if she
I
did
think
say that, would you
Justice-
say that was wrong?
No, I think Justice Cunningham should be running on her own record and should be pitching herself to the people just
Okay.
like every other candidate
But she
does
seems to
for
be
judge.
implying that since her father was a judge and she's been on the judiciary for 27 years, and since Justice Fitzgerald appointed her, she shouldn't have to get her hands dirty and run an election.
She's working
she
very
should just
hard.
get to be.
No, she's not implying that.
She is
Jeff.
implying that.
She is working very
But
hard right
that's
now.
why she's upset that apparently
and
that
probably the
Cunningham
reason she couldn't come
should
on
enter
your
this
show
race.
is because it's very difficult running countywide, and you have to be at a lot of places. And a few weeks before the election, she's running all over
and
the
she
place.
just figured that out now. No, because they said it was a personal problem. You got to keep your story straight.
I don't
They
know
told me it
whose
was a
story.
personal
I'm
problem.
not running
That
for-
wouldn't be a personal
I
problem.
just happen to think that Mary Jane Tice, T-H-E-I-S, I'm reminding your viewers, is the person to vote for. I would
In your view.
strongly recommend it, yes.
But others would say it would be Justice Cunningham, C-U-N-N-I-N-G-H-A-M, who's currently an appellate justice. Others would say it's really a Paczynski. How do we spell that? P-U-C-I-N-S-K-I?
Well, I am your guest today, so you've asked me about this race. I didn't bring it up.
But you know
so
Ori Paczynski.
You've asked me
You
about
like Ori,
it, so
don't you?
I'm declaring that I'm supporting her.
Well, okay, but put your analyst hat on this for a minute, okay? It is said that Ori Paczynski, starting this race, had 85 to 90% name recognition from the prior offices that she ran for. And her father was a congressman for many years, many, many years ago, but still that name, Paczynski name, is a storied name in Chicago, right? You would agree, Paczynski. It's known a bit more than, say, Tice, just to pick a
Right,
random name.
right.
Okay, which you almost have to spell so people know it's not
Right,
T-I-C.
exactly.
They can
It's
find
hard
somewhere
to
in the
figure out,
ballot.
right.
Yeah, okay.
T-H-E-I-S.
Right. And so Paczynski's a storied name. Cunningham is known for being somebody who is, she would be the first female African-American justice on the Illinois Supreme Court if she's elected. That would be historic. Not unlike, here we go, Barack Obama from Promise to Power. What comes up?
I supported him
Where's this-
once.
And
I
what
was-
comes up?
I
When
was
you
one
say
of-
when you see Barack
And you know
Obama,
what?
what
I
comes
was
to
one
name?
of the first people to support Barack Obama in the North Shore, and was glad when nobody had ever heard of him for the United States Senate to take him around right now, and people challenged me and him on the very same grounds. Like, who are you, young man who nobody knows what brought you here? You're running
supported
against
Barack?
people with more storied names, but he
For the
ran,
U.S.
he
Senate,
won.
you support him for the. You're the first to support him for the U.S. Senate when
Yes.
he started running in 2003,
Yes.
when he was on Public Affairs, right? For his third or fourth time. We were the first, even before you. Did you know Barack in March of 2000? Did you know he was on this show in March of 2000?
I knew
Is it
him
possible
then.
I knew Barack before you did?
No, I knew him then. I was a state legislator.
Because you were a state rep, and he was a
1999.
state senator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably right. You got me there. All right, so you score a few points every once in a while, right? All right. Well, what comes to mind when you think of Barack Obama?
Leader, strong, the future.
Okay. And here you go. Let's play this word association a little bit. Dick Cheney, in my time, what comes to mind when you see the name Dick Cheney?
Slug.
Oh, that's not being fair.
Oh, please.
You think he's a slug? He was the Vice
Yes.
President of the United States for 8 years.
Yes, he was
Influential.
the henchman. He was the henchman.
Policy guy? All right.
Well, he was a
Slug?
policy guy.
That's the
but
best you can do is slug?
But I wouldn't support, he was not somebody I supported. He was the henchman for the president. Did you read him?
Milton Friedman, Capitalism and Freedom.
Capitalism.
Let's see if we can get that up there. Okay. What comes to mind when you see Milton Friedman's name?
Free market capitalism.
Let's go over to Medicaid for a little bit. Let's take a little detour here.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, you are now the head of that $15 billion department.
Right.
$15 billion.
Well, it's $14 billion just for the Medicaid
Just for
program.
Medicaid. $18 billion total.
Right.
I mean, you're an influential person,
Ooh, yeah.
would you say?
Yeah.
When somebody,
I
when
have the
Paquin
hardest
says you've
job
got to
in state
cut,
government.
he wants you to cut $2 billion out of that $15 billion
Yes.
Medicaid budget,
Yes,
14.8.
Yes.
He wants you to cut it by like about a seventh.
Well,
That's
no,
about
it's worse than that. And we
15 to
we need to
20%?
cut 2.7 billion out of what the only funds that we can cut are about 11.5. So now it's 23% of the total.
So you
It's a big
lie
problem.
awake at
It's a
night.
big-
You
yes, I
lie
do.
awake at night figuring out how to do this with doing as little harm as you can to
Right.
the people
It's
who are
true.
truly worthy of getting this assistance.
Yes.
But some say we're not helping the people who are most in need because we're helping too many people, and many of those are not quite as needy. What's the eligibility for Medicaid assistance? I thought at one point it was a family income of $60,000. Is that wrong?
Well, children only. The family income can be 60,000 for children only services.
Right, but is
And
that-
then for
are
the
we going
higher
too far?
income,
Should people with 60,000
And then
be
for
able to pay
higher-
something for their Medicaid?
yes, they should pay something.
But
and
they don't
do.
pay.
No, 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 no.
They do pay something?
No, no. The
What do
higher
they pay?
income people pay a premium and pay copays.
Yeah,
And they
but
should.
like, shouldn't the private sector be able to help them out in large part mostly?
Well, the private sector those are the people
The
who are
providers.
called uninsured.
Oh.
There's also, as we know, a big batch
How
of
can somebody be
uninsured.
uninsured if you can just step up and go to Medicaid and get it for nothing? How could you be uninsured?
So do you want the answer to this?
Yes.
Okay, not everybody qualifies for Medicaid, regardless of income. So there are...
Who doesn't qualify?
Well, right now, Medicaid is in certain categories. If you're a child, you qualify. Your caretaker qualifies, so your parent to the child. If you're disabled, or if you're a senior, a low-income senior, that's it. 4 categories.
So if you don't have any
4
children,
categories.
but
If
your
you're a
income is...
single-
If
you're a single male, a single female, a middle-aged person who doesn't have any dependent children, you do not qualify for
even if your
Medicaid.
income is less than 20,000?
Right.
Even if your income is less than 20,000?
You do not qualify right now for Medicaid. Now, under the new Affordable Care Act, people will
You would.
qualify based
Okay.
on income.
So you have to be, you're saying, to qualify
So that's
for
what the
Medicaid, you
uninsured
have to be
are.
a parent. You have to be,
Parent of
have a child.
That's right.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. I'm not sure I knew that.
But there's a huge number of uninsured in our society. They arrive at emergency rooms, they arrive in hospitals. That's who the providers are taking care of. Nobody pays for them. They're also complaining that we don't pay enough, we don't pay on time, but nobody
But
pays for the uninsured.
you don't pay on time.
We don't.
And that should be changed. There's no point in having a
big
program where you
problem.
don't pay
It's a
because
big
then the
problem.
providers won't provide.
We are
And
so
what's the
deep in
what's
the
the-
hole.
What's the point of being a part of a program where the doctors don't want to service you
Right.
because you don't pay?
And if we don't cut $2 billion, it's going to get even worse. And nobody will pay for it. Nobody will provide
So what's the
services.
answer? How are you going to cut $2 billion?
We're going to cut eligibility, we're going to
Okay.
cut services, we're going to cut utilization,
So you have to
we're
bring
going to
down-
impose controls.
You have to
we
do.
have to do
You have
it.
to get. You have to
It
get
does keep
more
me awake
focused
at
on the
night,
truly needy.
but we do.
Some
well,
people aren't. What
we-
about? Do you have to be? Do you have
We're
to be?
going to take waste out of
What
the
if you're an
system.
undocumented worker? Do you get Medicaid?
Undocumented children in Illinois get Medicaid.
What if you're an undocumented adult? You don't.
No.
But if you're a child, you do. Should
Yeah.
we do that? Does that invite parents to bring their kids
It
here
is-
because they can get better health care in the United States by being an undocumented worker than they can by, say, staying in Mexico?
The legislature right now is deciding that. It's a legislative policy because they have to
And
vote.
if you were there, what would you tell them to do? I mean, you know the legislature.
You know what? I would say that, first of all, children's health care, children are intermixed with everybody else in classrooms. So having sick undocumented children doesn't really help the non-undocumented children within the classroom setting. Children are not that expensive to serve, but we might as well take care of them when they're sick.
Yeah, they're
So I would
really
probably
expensive
say
people
we
are the
should keep
elderly people who have
undocumented
lots of
children.
ailments, right?
What?
The really expensive people are the elderly people.
16% of our clients use up 56% of the budget.
And they're mostly, what,
Disabled
over 50?
and seniors.
And seniors, okay. Because they got a lot of ailments.
16%, or disabilities.
Okay.
Multiple disabilities.
What about prescription drugs? Isn't it the case that you folks pay more than other private insurance companies pay for prescription
We
drugs?
don't. We actually
I thought
have
there were
done a
data
pretty
that showed
good
that.
job. No,
You're
I
saying?
think we've done a good job in really reducing that.
In the
We
last
are-
2 years since you've been there?
No, but we
Before?
are going to impose controls on drug utilization.
Now, you've been there 2 years.
Did you hear what I just said? We are going to impose controls.
Say
We're
it
going
again.
to put a fixed number of prescriptions that people can have in the Medicaid
Well,
program.
you're going to impose price controls, you're telling me?
No, we're going to impose a number of prescriptions that people can have in the Medicaid program.
Oh, and outside those drugs, you can't get it? Or,
They will have to pay for it.
okay, and how are you going to decide what's within the program and what's without?
Well, I think doctors should decide that. We're going to actually push doctors to sit down and look at all the scripts. We have 200,000
So you're saying there's
people.
certain drugs that
We
you'll
have
pay for?
200,000 people who have more than 5 prescriptions.
So here's the problem. I thought
We need
you're-
to change that.
I thought you were sort of a free market person, especially for a Democrat. Did I get that right?
Well, I don't know. What's your question?
Well,
In some ways,
you
yes.
have
In
to.
some ways,
If
in
you
some
want
ways,
to,
no.
if you want to start getting things right, I mean, where is Milton?
Milton?
Excuse me, folks, for bending out of your ear shut. But here, Milton Friedman,
Yeah.
Capitalism and Freedom. Wherever you get the chance, do this. Keep getting our props mixed up here. But
You're
anyway,
not going to
somewhere-
show me Ayn Rand, are you?
No, I was looking for this. It's the complement to that free to choose.
Yeah.
Milton Friedman and Rose Friedman, okay? You get
Mm-hmm.
that? Get a good shot of that, free to choose? There is nothing more important, in a sense, really, than these two books. So if you're a Democrat and you haven't read this, if you're a Republican, if you haven't read these two books, I heartily recommend you read it. And to balance it out a little bit, you could read this, The Affluent Society from John Kenneth Galbraith. He wasn't really an economist, but he was a social critic. But the main thing is, he was saying we had too many choices. The problem with America back in 1950 or 60, too many choices. You know, get all sorts of soap, all sorts of health care, too many choices. These people, not enough choices. You should make your program more about choice. You should try to give people more flexibility. The more constraints, the more regulations, the more inhibitions we put on folks' choice, the worse it'll get and the more expensive it'll get. Do you
Actually,
understand that?
Jeff, we're actually going the
tell
opposite
you, have you ever read
direction.
this book?
No.
I
We're
give this to you. Will you promise to read it?
Well, after the legislative session, you can give it
No,
back
no,
to
no.
me.
It's important you
I
read it.
promise I will not read this in the next
Just
3
dip
months.
into it.
Yeah.
Give it to Alan. He'll read it.
Okay.
Okay. Give it to Justice Kryman. He's my buddy.
Sure.
Okay. He'll listen to me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But seriously, you've got to give people more choices. That's the point. Look, you exercise choice when you pick Brad Schneider, and that's fine. That's the other part: capitalism and freedom. Okay. Essentially, they're two sides of the same coin: freedom and democracy. Let freedom ring. Let people pick Brad Schneider. Let people pick John Tree. Let people pick Ilya Shaman. And let people pick Vivek Bhatta. I can't remember. I messed up your name, Vivek. But my apologies. Let them choose. Just like in the 8th Congressional District. A big choice there between Tammy Duckworth and Raja Krishnamurthy. Who should they choose?
I'm for Tammy Duckworth.
You're so much, you got her
Not
name
Fun
right.
Freeman, no.
All right, you're for Tammy. You endorsed her, but they're both good people.
They're both
You
good
agree?
people,
Both
sure.
been guests of this show. We don't endorse. We say God bless to both of them.
Yeah.
Joe
Well,
Walsh has
our
been here. God
democracy-
bless to Joe
you know
Walsh. He's
what?
been here. Let people choose. We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Julie Hamos. She is the director of the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services. She deserves a lot of credit for taking on that job 2 years ago. She won't get the credit, except for me. You won't get
Nobody.
it. And from Justice Kryman,
Right.
who knows how hard you
I'm
work at it.
going to be a very
but you deserve a
unpopular
lot of
person
credit.
in Springfield because we're not going to let people have so many choices in the Medicaid program.
But you're working with
We
those
are not going to.
legislators.
We're
You're
going
working
the opposite
bicamerally
direction.
and bipartisan. You're going to get a report, right?
We're working in the opposite direction, though, how to contain this program, how to contain the Medicaid budget.
But you have to understand, when you try to contain things, when you try to put price controls on things, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
We're not talking about
You
price
can
controls,
contain,
but utilization controls.
Yeah, but the more you constrain things, the less choice and the less maximization of
We are
consumer
going to
welfare.
have utilization controls because
Will you
right
come
now
back
it's
and
too
do
big of a...
another show with us right now? You can just stick around and we'll do another show. People
No,
won't
thank
hear.
you.
We'd love to
I'm
have
outta
you.
here.
We'd love to have
Thank you. Are we
No,
done?
no, we're not done. Don't take anything
Okay.
off. She's so anxious. She loves coming on the
Because
show
I have
so often.
I have a lot on my plate.
All right. So I know you're a Democrat, but in the Republican primary, Mitt Romney wins, right, on March 20th, right?
Assume.
You think? Would you make that prediction?
I would.
Romney is the person that Barack Obama administration has been most worried about. You know that. They've been focusing him on the beginning. He's the person who can give Barack Obama